Okay, today we're here at Tualatin Historical Society in the Heritage Center talking with Sue Raxter, who is a fixture in our city after 26 years, but she didn't start here. This is April 12th, 2023, and we're going to have a nice time today with Sue. Let's talk first about your start in life, Sue. Where did life start?
Spokane, Washington.
And what year, would you care to say?
1937, May 28th.
All right, we're coming up on May.
Yes, we are.
Close. That's great. So, from Spokane, you came where?
From Spokane, we went back to where my father and all the family were in Belgium and Michigan, Chicago primarily, and then we were back and forth between Michigan because my dad's families and them are all from Belgium, so there's a big Belgium contingency in Michigan. So we lived between Michigan, the Upper Peninsula, and Chicago.
Great.
We lived in a 5th floor walk-up.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Right about a block from the lake, and that was our playground.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
What brought you west?
The war, because my dad and uncle, my dad was always a worker. He could always figure out a way to make money. Sometimes I don't think it was legal, but that's okay. And that time they did what they had to do to survive, you know. But so my dad and my uncle found out that there were jobs on the West Coast, the shipyards. So my dad and my uncle hitchhiked from Chicago to Portland. And later on, about 3 months later, my mother, my aunt, and 4 kids in a Woody station wagon drove from Chicago to Vanport, where we had a home.
Was that caught up in the Vanport flood?
We moved 2 weeks before the flood.
And did you have to get out quick that day in May?
No, because they finally, they found a house that we could rent on 86 and Southeast Taylor.
Oh.
And it was 1 bedroom with an attached garage. And my aunt, my uncle, 2 kids, my father, my mother, and 4 of us lived there.
Okay.
For about 4 years. Yeah.
Well, I know eventually you got to Wilsonville.
Eventually we did, after a few moves, when I got married in Portland. I knew that I didn't want to raise my kids in Portland, in the North Portland area. I just could not see that happening. And I had always been a horse nut from the time I was a child. I could smell a horse a mile away and I'd find it. And I had some great mentors as a child. So I kept looking, and I knew I didn't have a very good marriage, but I thought, I've got to get my kids out of here. And so I played on his ego, how great he'd look at a cowboy hat and be a rancher. I was desperate. So I started looking in the paper, and I found out that they were selling small sections of land in Wilsonville. And so I called and made inquiries, and we had not used the VA loan yet. So I talked him into it, kept building up his ego. I even found an old cowboy hat and gave it to him, and he wore it proudly. He thought in the mirror he looked great. So anyway, we ended up buying the property in Wilsonville, and we bought that in 1967. We got a house, and there was going to be 7 houses on that road. And we were the 3rd house and barn, and we built a small barn at first. Then it became a big barn, and then my outdoor arena. And so that's how we ended up in Wilsonville. And he lasted about 2 months, and he hated it, and he'd just come and go when he felt like it. So I'm handy, put in fences. I could build stalls. I could hit my thumb a lot. You learn when you hit your thumb, you don't do it again. And I learned to do a lot of things. Of course, I was raised in a family of all boys, and everybody participated. So I had already learned a lot about building and cement work, and you name it, I could do it. So it worked.
Good.
Lucky me. Lucky girls. Because my girls could run any place they wanted. We had woods, we had a creek. They lived in heaven. Kids at that time could run anywhere. We could ride the horses down to the river. We could, I mean, it was heaven, you know. I hated to leave it.
And that's how many girls did you have there?
5.
5 girls, and they all grew up in Wilsonville.
They all grew up in Wilsonville. The last one was born right after Wilsonville became a city.
Okay.
Became a city in October of 68, and she was born in January of 69. So she was the first baby born in the city of Wilsonville.
And so what was Wilsonville like then?
Wilsonville, when we moved there, Beckman Road was gravel. Our road was a dirt road, which turned out to be Canyon Creek Road, which was named for my 4-H horse club. That's another story. But there was 998 people when we moved down. And of course, everybody knew everybody. And I'd go down to the feed store even 5 years after living there, and the boys at the feed store, which that store is still there, but it's now people are living in it, would say, well, here comes the new people. Sitting around, and it was a potbelly stove. It was so cute, you know, and I was always the new people. But it was small. There was a grocery store, the Lowrys. I'm still a very good friend with the remaining Lowrys. And it was just everybody knew and took care of. And if your kids got in trouble at school, you knew about it before they got home. They could never figure out how. I always knew. It was wonderful.
What were your careers during that time?
My careers during that time, when we lived in Portland, because I had babies, I was a stay-at-home mom, and I ran a daycare and 2 days a week preschool. And then later on, when I knew that there was a chance of getting out, we needed money, so I worked after the last daycare child went home. I would have dinner on the table, and he would come home, and I would go down to Wong's Chinese restaurant and work there till 11 o'clock. Then I'd come home, and I'd sit in the bathtub, and my first daycare kid came at 5:30 in the morning. It just worked. All I could think about is this is getting us there, right? And that's what it did. So then when we moved here, then I had Christy, the youngest one. So I did daycare, I trained horses, trained dogs, because I've always been an animal nut. And, so, you know, did rescue work with animals, and did the daycare and all that. And then when Christy got into first grade, I went to work for the Westland School District as a tutor and substitute, even though I did not have a teaching certificate. But they allowed me because they knew my history with kids, with 4-H and bluebirds and all of that stuff. And then I'd work there, and then I'd have the same time off as the girls, except that I worked nights when I got a chance. I was on call at the different restaurants. By that time, there was the Lark, and then up where Costco and all of that is, there was a restaurant, Burns Brothers truck stop. There was a restaurant there. So once in a while they'd call me, hey, can you work 2 hours? And I'd go and maybe work from 1 to 2 in the morning. You know, and every place you go, you meet people that you can barter with or get something, you know, yeah.
Right. So did horses continue to be part of your life during?
Oh, forever, yes, yes. I bought my first horse when I was 18. And when I got married, that only lasted about 2 months, then I had to sell him. And I had him boarded at a neighbor's place, and I just was meant to do that. And so when we did move, then he went out and found a couple of horses that were just, yeah. But I loved working with them. My kids got that opportunity. They all rode. They all got to be in 4-H and go to state fair and county fair and the camp out. And it's just always been there, and I just connected to them, you know, and I had a rapport with them, and I could get them to do what needed to be done without any harsh treatment, because I didn't believe in that.
So 4-H was really important in your life?
Oh, absolutely. I started the 4-H group in 1969. Must have been about April. And I called the extension office, got all the information, and I put the word out. that we'd have a 4-H horse club, and I ended up with way too many kids, but that's when I built my outdoor arena, and parents helped me, and it was absolutely fantastic. We had a great group, and I right away put down, they had to come for an interview, and the parents had to sign up to be involved, at least one parent. You don't drop off the kid and the horse and leave. You just can sit up on the deck, which I built, and you can watch, but you keep your mouth shut. If you don't like the way things are done, go someplace else. But I was real strict with the kids, but we made it fun. And I also was raised in community service. My dad and mom loved boys, and boys were their main goal in life, to help boys out, which was good. And my dad helped build the Peninsula Boys Club, which you probably know of in North Portland. And he and another group of men started that, the Pals Club in Southeast Portland, and the Columbia Boys Club in North Portland. And so we worked on any breakfast or any fundraisers that made money. So that's what my motto with all these 4-H kids, and I gave the same speech every year, but it ended with, someday you'll outgrow your horses, but you never outgrow your community. And you want to go to county fair? I have to sign off, and you will have so many community service points or you don't go. I don't care how great you are, you don't go. Easy. And so then that added to another thing in my life. I was asked to be on the Clackamas County Horse Advisory Board. Did that. They kept hearing about all these things, and then I think, like I told you, the state selected me to go to Washington, D.C. to the 4-H Congress and present community pride or community service. And it came out, it took about 1.5 years, and it came out as a 4-H project called Community Pride. Yay, I was so happy. Get kids involved, you know? That's where it starts.
Is that how you got to Tualatin too?
Well, I knew Tualatin well because the only place to shop was groceries at Lowry's, and then Kmart built a store here. And we loved Lee's Kitchen, and we loved Rich's Kitchen. So once a month, I'd save enough money for the kids. They each took turns picking out where they wanted to go, and you couldn't do fast food because I'd never allowed that. But they loved that, so we'd come up to Lee's Kitchen, then we'd go to Kmart, do what we had to do there, and got very involved. And actually, we rode in the Crawfish Festival every year when they had the parade. There were horse shows right next to the police station in that big field over there. And then sometimes the other side of the trestle where it's the dog park now, I believe. And then my first one was about 1969, is one of my parents called me. They lived on Boone's Ferry Road, kind of across from where the high school is now. And their horse had been taken during the night. And the horse had 3 distinctive white marks under its mane. Just a little bay horse. But the daughter was devastated. I mean, kids and their horses and their dogs and their cats and everything. And so I put out the word, and during that time, of course, no email, no texting, no nothing. So we always had phone trees. If I called one person, one group, they had so many people that they called, and we all just spread the word like wildfire. And somebody said, what about the Blue Mountain dog food? There's a corral behind there, which didn't see it from the road. So another friend and I went over there, and sure enough, there was a corral, and there's about a dozen horses in there. And so we waited a while, and we kept watching, and I went up and asked about it, and this guy said, well, you know, he was just supposed to take care of him and throw stuff to him until they took care of him. I didn't know that they did it on the spot, and maybe they didn't. Or maybe they were collected and picked up there. I really never knew for sure if they did the slaughtering there. Of course, it smelled like it. I mean, you just, whoa, you know. But finally, we went back and we went in there and we started looking at the horses, and the horse was in there. So she stayed there, and I went home, hooked up the horse trailer, brought my truck up, and we took that horse out of there and loaded it, and I took the horse to another spot, to a friend's house, and put it there. And he said, you can't do that. And I said, well, watch me. Because we have pictures of this horse and where it belongs. And you people are illegally holding it. And I can fight about that. Because this is for this kid who's heartbroken, you know. So, but I love Tualatin. I mean, I've always been involved in Tualatin. I don't know how. But Tualatin and Wilsonville are close, and, you know, they're and at one point, the Wilsonville Chamber and the Tualatin Chamber had talked about going together as one. And, but they didn't do it. And, but they were just a close, two communities kind of worked together. So if something was needed up here, hauled my 4-H kids up here. It was part of the community.
But you've always been involved in community stuff, right?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely.
What are some of the other groups you've been part of?
Well, we started a women's business group years ago and dedicated ourselves to being a service group, a nonprofit service group. So
Wilsonville, this is?
Wilsonville. It's called Women in Wilsonville. And then we named it to of Wilsonville. Upside down, it spells mom. And but we started that, and of course, I'd always been in community service because of the 4-H and the Bluebird group, which, you know, they are precursor to Campfire Girls. And that was 4 years, but we did we'd go to old folks' homes, we'd sing, usually in Wesleyan, and we came up here, there was a place where a lot of old folks were, and I don't know what it was, but the kids would sing to them, these little bluebirds, and they were so proud. And it just is so good for kids to do this. It's so needed. And then from the Women of Wilsonville, I brought up a lot of things that I'd been involved in, and we heard that Clackamas County wanted to put in a women's services and shelter in Oregon City. So I made some phone calls, and the first woman that was going to head it, Marianne Hurd, I think was her name, and I said, would you speak at our women's group? We had a once-a-month speaker meeting. So she came down, and we got very involved, and we did 2 different fundraisers over a 3-year period. And at one point, we were able to give $900, and the next point, it was $3,000 towards the women's services and the shelter up there. I mean, then we collected clothes for them and, you know, did all of that. But then people start calling you because they know that you're a soft touch and you can't say no. And people would remind me, and I still use it and remind people, no is only 2 letters, but it's a hard one to say, you know. So, yeah, so it was that, and then we did a lot of burned families moving into the area. When they were bringing in a lot of people from Vietnam, we would find them homes, and we'd find them shelters, and we'd find them a family that would adopt them and help them through the process. And we adopted families for holidays, and we just, anything that came up, we did it. When they had the flood, we all went down there and packed, filled sandbags. I mean, for hours and hours. And then I went home and I heard water shushing, and I looked downstairs and I was flooded. But oh well, you know, I'll sleep upstairs, you know, so I'll deal with it tomorrow. But yeah, anything that needed to be done, and we put it, and then we put in the trails at the city park. They didn't have the city park at that time down the River Memorial Park, and there'd been talk, but well, in the meantime, I got asked to be on the Parks Board. And then I had already served 2 terms, one time before that, and then later on the Chamber Board. And so, and of course, we did a lot of stuff there because I like to do that kind of stuff. And we heard that the property was down there, so we negotiated to buy that property. And then the adjoining property, riverfront property, Nike bought that to build a Nike campus. And one of the park's paid advisor, we went over and visited Nike, their headquarters, and talked them into taking a trade where they would build up on 95th. And we would trade them for that property. So that's what we did. And then the 4-H kids, there was big walnut groves that went down into the park. And it was just a dirt road. So Maury Conway had a cement company. So I called Maury and I told him that we needed a road and we needed help getting it in. I have no shame when it comes to asking people to do things. Absolutely no shame whatsoever. There again, they can say no, but it's hard to say. And so Maury got his crew and they went in there and put in a blacktop road, and later on they cemented it for us, put in a nice road for us going down the park. Then in the meantime, we went down there. I took all the 4-H kids and the families down there. That was mandatory. Families had to come. And we walked the trails, the deer trails. And I said, all trails should follow the deer trails. They know the best route, and that's what we do. So we got down there and we raked and we cleaned up debris and raked those trails. And then I went to the mayor, Phil Balsinger at the time, the first mayor of Wilsonville, and I explained what we needed. And I said, even if we run a small bulldozer? He said, yeah. And I said, why don't you be our head? You go down there, you take that bulldozer and help us. You go on the trails and get a lot of those roots and clean it, and our group will follow and smooth it all out. And he said, well, and I said, well, come on, Phil, you're the perfect person to do it because you're the mayor of the city and it's needed for the community. I didn't have to get permission from the city. Yay! So there's Phil, and I called the news that we had a little paper that came out once a month. I called him and I said, come on down here. The mayor really wants this project done. I lie a little bit. But I got it done. And Phil was so proud driving that thing, and he was a push. And I said, now follow the deer trails. We've got them all marked. Okay, and he's doing it, and we're just working like dogs behind him. And then we had a huge potluck in the area there, and it was absolutely fantastic. And he was proud of it, the city was proud of it, but we maintained the walnut fields there, that whole orchard. So the 4-H kids, when walnuts were falling, we set up, and I had bought a scale, and we had bags and everything donated from the feed store to fill up with walnuts. It could be you pick, or we would sell you bags already full. Wow. And all that money went into the park to maintain it. And so, we all left at the end of the day with black hands, how walnuts are, and you never get it off. And it was absolutely glorious to see that happen. And then we eventually put in a outdoor arena, which was used a lot. And for years, the kids, we maintained those trails. Twice a year we went down, raked, cleaned, and picked up, and and we hauled everything out, and we did that. And so I had the group for about 19 years.
Wow.
Yeah.
So then what brought you to Tualatin?
Well, Wilsonville got bigger and bigger and bigger. And finally, we kept getting hit by people that wanted to develop our properties. And I always said, I'm going to die there. This is my home. That barn is my sanctuary, and the woods and the creek are my heaven. But it got that pretty soon everybody on the other side of the road, the east side or the west side of the road, sold out except for one person. And the builders came in and started building houses with alleyways and no front yard. And the noise, and then kids showed up, and then they're throwing rocks at my horses. I'd come home from work, they'd be in the hayloft and climbing through fences. And I was told that if I did not take the hot wire down and the kids got hit by the hot wire, I could be sued. Because our world kind of turned around, that the kids were entitled to do what they wanted, and you could sue anybody. And I even offered these kids that kept coming, I said, hey, if you kids want to learn to ride, I'll show you how to ride and take care of horses. Well, I had a few takers, and the parents had to come and sign a release. And I thought if they do that, they won't want to destroy it. But the kids are kids, and mom and dad just let them run wild. And, well, you have the woods. I don't know why they can't come and go down and play in your woods. But if they get hurt, I get sued. So finally, I just thought, I finally had to find a place for my horses because they were getting chased, and then people would bring their dogs over. The dogs would chase the horses. One of the horses finally kicked one of the dogs, and they tried to get me to pay for the vet bills. And I thought, this is a night, and it's not fair to my animals, and it wasn't fair to me. So I kept getting knocks on the door, and finally I thought, no, I'm going to stay. Then the city sent me a notice that if I wanted to stay there, I had 1 month, and then they were going to cut my well off because my well was incredible, just the best well on the whole area. I never had a water softener or hard water problem, nothing. It was perfect water. And I would have to hook up to the city water. The lines had already been put down Canyon Creek Road. But from my house to there, it would cost me $32,000. And I thought, I stay here for $32,000. I have a barn with nobody in it. Can't keep the kids out. And in fact, one of them set fire out there. They wanted to have a fire, so they sat in the hayloft thinking they could roast weenies. Oh God, and I thought, I'm done. So I called my daughter and I said, come over and you and Pat haul all the hay away. Her husband, they lived on Borland Road and had property and horses. So I got rid of everything and I rehomed horses. I gave some away to good families, and and I thought, okay, it's time for me to look around. And I kept coming over to Tualatin because I liked it. And by this time I had gotten out of my big girl world where I was in marketing and sales for 20 years. I wore business suits and carried a briefcase. I looked like I knew what I was doing. But I apparently did because I did pretty well with it. But again, I didn't take no for an answer if they didn't want to talk to me. Well, I just love a challenge. So I kept looking over here, and then I knew what I wanted. I wanted a single level, a yard, front yard to backyard. Didn't have to be big. And I had certain criteria. And I kept looking and looking, and I looked at so many houses. And the people that bought my property and the property next door said, we're not going to do anything for a couple of years. And I said, fine. So the city gave me an extension on letting my well go for till the end of the year. So I had until then to get everything squared away. And I sold things, and if you've got 8-stall barn, everybody stores stuff in there. And I sent out a letter to everybody, and mostly my children. You have 30 days to get everything out of here. If you don't, it goes to the dump. Well, Mom, what are you going to do with it? Well, it's not mine. It's yours. Get it. It's gone. Yikes. So anyhow, that finally worked out. And then I discovered that when you are going to move out, and everybody knows you are, that all the builders over in building those homes think it's a free-for-all when I leave to come and help themselves to what they want. I'd come home and my plants would be dug up, and I was going to put them all over my new yard. And I went, oh, jeez. And then all of a sudden my front door was gone, but they put up a piece of plywood for me. Then the big windows were gone. I mean, I didn't realize that you had to hire protection to save what you wanted. My patio furniture that was in the barn was gone. My snow tires were gone. My best chainsaw, which I loved my chainsaw, was gone. A lot of my tools just kept disappearing. And I finally thought, I got to get out of here sooner. So I called a couple of guys I know that were just lovely, lovely young men with young families, and I said, I need help. Bring your flatbeds. And I said, but I want you over here at 11 o'clock at night. And they said, Well, now Miss Sue, a couple little Mexican men, they're just adorable. Their families were so cute. And I said, we're gonna make a midnight raid and we're gonna take my plants back and I want you to take them over to the new place. Put them in the back and just bank them in and we'll take care of it later. So we went and took all my plants back. The people that were putting in those houses in the yards just helped themselves probably build a builder for them. But I just took, and I knew which ones they were because I had tags on them and I could do it because I keep records of plants. I'm kind of nutty like that, but so we hauled all those away and anything else they worked all night long hauling stuff away to take it over. And then I had already found the house, but I was coming by one day and I was looking at 3 different houses right over in that area in our neighborhood. And as I'm going by, I saw a guy walk out there and put a sign for sale by owner. And I stopped and I said, I also had a price that I would pay. I would not go over. I didn't care what work it needed because I love to do that kind of stuff. And so he threw a price at me and I said, can I look at it? And he said, well, our 2 little boys are down for a nap. And I said, can I come back in about an hour? And he said, yeah. So I went at the other places that I'd scheduled to look at the houses. And that one, and I knew the house well because when I used to walk and train dogs in Tualatin, by that time I'd opened up the pet sitting business, I would walk all over these areas. And I'd walk down Pueblo Street a lot, and so I knew the area well. So I thought, So I came back, and he said, they're almost getting up. And I said, can I go and look through your back gate? He said, yeah, and I went back, and I thought, this is it. This is the house. I just knew it. I hadn't even seen the inside.
That was what year?
That was, well, I just had my 17th anniversary there, 2006. And so I went and I looked at the backyard and I thought, okay, I can put a fence across here, get rid of that ugly deck, And I walked in and it had a sunken living room and I said, well, that's gonna have to go. And he said, what? And I said, no, I'm just talking to myself. And I said, I'm going to make you an offer right now. And he said, what? And I said, yeah. I said, when do you have to be out of here? He said, we have to be in Utah in a month. And I thought, well, I can sleep in my truck. I had a car and a truck, and I still had 2 horse trailers to sell. Well, actually, I ended up donating one and a whole trailer full of horse equipment to Crystal Peak, if you know what that is. It's over in Bend, and Crystal Peak takes in unwanted horses that have been battered a bit and battered kids, and they put them together. It's the most awesome place. They just do great work over there. So I donated all that stuff to them. And my daughter took one of the trailers to her house, and I sold the other one, and had to sell my truck, which just killed me. But right after I moved here, I did. But it just worked out. I was supposed to be there. You know how you get a feeling sometimes that this is where I'm supposed to be. And I lived there about 3 weeks, and I called a friend of mine, and I said, you're not going to believe this. I just discovered something. This is so stupid. She says, what? I said, I'm officially a city girl. I have sidewalks. I mean, how bizarre is that to get so excited over sidewalks? But the first week I got in there, and I was, boxes everywhere and stuff. And I was a walker. I mean, I'd walk a minimum 3 miles every morning early. I'd been doing that for years. I used to be a runner. And I came by here, and I thought, I know this building because it used to be down on Boone's Ferry. It was a church, and then a friend of mine rented it and made a resale clothing shop out of it. Do you remember that?
Yes, Heritage Center where
yes,
today.
Yes, exactly. And they did that, and I thought, of course, I'm a history nut, and I thought, I gotta be there. So about a week or so later, I came down, and Duffy Hamilton was here. And I said, do you need any help down here? I could give you 2 hours about 3 days a week. 2 hours each time? She said, yeah, we do. She says, we have a upstairs that is filled and completely disorganized. I said, I love it. I'll take it on. So I've been here ever since.
Yep, I remember that myself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So back to your house, and is that when you started your dog sitting business called Paws and Tails Pet Service?
In Wilsonville, yes, because I've been with the company that I've been in for 20 years. Absolutely adored my job. In fact, shortly after I started there, well, I got a divorce, and I found out that I could live with just one job. It was just awesome, and I still had 3 girls at home, so I thought, perfect. And I was there for 20 years, and all of a sudden, I was in Carmel, California, seeing a client that was opening up the Carmel Brewing Company, and he wanted me to come down and do all their trucks and all that stuff. And I'd known him from Blitz. He had been the brewmaster there. And I'm sitting there, and Bob was always late for everything, and I'm sitting there, and I thought, I've lost my joy. If you don't have joy, you just don't, it's not good. I've totally lost my joy for this job. Well, a college grad, son of the owner, came in and took over. And of course, at that age, he knew everything. And he let me know that he did not think women belonged in that business. So he just kept trying to take national accounts away from me. And I finally thought, you know, I don't need this. And I sat there thinking, what is my biggest joy? And I thought, animals. So I thought, I'm always asked to take care of everybody else's animals when they go on. And I thought, I could get paid to do that. That's what I'm going to do. So I gave myself 6 months to stash every little extra penny away. And I walked out. I was gone. Filled my briefcase with what little things I needed, and I walked out and boxed up all kinds of business suits and dressing gowns for all the fundraisers I did with the Portland Chamber and the Portland Advertising Association, and plus our chamber and plus the women of Wilsonville. We didn't dress up like that in Wilsonville, but I called Clackamas County Women's Shelter, and I said, I've got a whole bunch of stuff for the girls for your next auction and sale. So that's what I did. So I started the pet sitting business, and I was very lucky because I already had a great list of clients from my 4-H kids to all the people that would bring horses to me and dogs to get them to mind better. Well, we have to train the people, not the dogs or the horses. So I did that, and I sent it out, and within a week I couldn't have kept up with it. So I made a radius of how many miles I'd go from my house. And so I did it all, and pretty soon I tried the hiring business, but if they didn't feel like going in and taking care of the cows, they didn't show up. So then I put it out to different people that were interested in doing it, that I knew that knew animals, and I sold a quarter of my business. And after that I quit selling, and I just gave it away because everybody needs a break, and I was doing fine, you know. So then I narrowed it down, and then one day somebody said, oh, I just hate having to leave them home all day, and you come in 3 times a day, and for the dog, the cats don't care. Just feed me and clean up after me and leave me alone, lady. Scratch me here and that's it. Some of them do love to be loved and played, and others are just, you know, the queens. And as the old saying goes, dogs have masters, cats have staff. And that's true. So then I said, yeah, I could do that for you. Let's try it out. And I was still doing rescue work with horses and dogs at that time. And I had a couple of rescue dogs plus my own. And it worked out great. And I thought, so, and I kept separate books. And when I thought, when I'm making a little bit more staying at home, I'm giving up the rest of it, which when I got to that point, because all the factors of your gas, your time of running, you know, and I did that, and it didn't take long. And then I stayed with that. that was another thing that I had when I was going to move. If I saw a place that I was interested, I'd come back on weekends when I could see the neighbors. And I'd say, I'm considering of moving in this area, and this is what I do for a living. And I need to know, will you have objections to it? And I teach no bark. And they said, well, we don't want to hear it. We will make trouble for you if you do that. We don't want a bunch of dogs running loose. They won't. They will be confined into a yard. I don't do kennels, I do yards in part of my home. And I teach manners. And I mean, I could go with 8 dogs in my backyard that got playing and got a little rambunctious, like kids yell, dogs bark. And I'd go out to the yard, look at the dogs. I said, who wants time out? They don't stop and look at me and shut up. It was easy, you know?
So that was your business at Tualatin, right?
Yes. Paws and Tails pet sitters.
And pretty soon you had a big clientele.
Oh yeah, so I kept setting other people up. And then we formed a pet sitters group, which is still going strong. So we set this big group up. I like organizing. Well, we did that with my writing, all my girls that rode and all my friends. We set up the Valley View Riders, and it's still going strong, big time. It's great because we did a lot of service work there. But yeah, so we set up the Portland Pet Sitters, and it was that way. I said, we're not competition, we're referral for each other. So if somebody called me and they lived in Hillsborough, I'd say, hey, here's some numbers for you to call, they're great. And that's what we do. Yeah.
Good.
Yeah.
And you're still doing that now?
No, actually, 3 years ago, I decided to retire because I'm tired. and I'm so involved in, and I'm still trying to say no, but I'm the worst person to do that, to the charity groups that I work with. And I think I told you from September on, my front living room looked like the Goodwill store. Because it's another thing that my ladies group got into was helping people going into hospice and what to do with all their stuff. And we lost our building, our big room where we used to be able to store stuff and organize it to get it to the right charities, and ended up being my house. So I finally thought, I've got to stop this. So, you know, that's who I am. But yeah, so I decided, so I put out the word, and I went through my clientele, and I gave everybody notice that by the end of the year I was done. And I gave every person at least 3 or 4 people that were doing what I did that I would highly recommend. If I wouldn't leave my dogs there, I wouldn't recommend them. But we're used to, you know, and they kept saying, well, you'll take this because you like her, so I adore her. But I got to stop for me. I've got to have time for my family and do some more things that I need to do for me. So it's taken me a long time, but gee, Larry, I have a dog there right now. But they're so nice. And I said, so really since January, I think I've only taken care of 2 or 3 dogs. And I said, if I'm not busy and it's not a 3-week or a 2-week or even a full week, I could help you in an emergency if one of the others can't. And that's the way I put it. But they still call me first, but I've got them now so they're calling the others now first, which is good. But these people, the dog is so old, and a lot of people don't want to deal with old dogs.
Well, during the pandemic, were a lot of people taking in dogs to their home?
Yeah, and the pandemic was so pathetic, and everybody was so excited because the shelters were just unloading dogs, and it broke my heart. Because I knew, gee, we need something to keep the kids occupied. We always wanted a dog, didn't have time. But I knew, well, we all thought it was going to be over in a few months. But the longer it went on, the more in tune these little animals, cats, dogs, birds, whatever, ended up in these homes. Oh my God, I've got people that love me, and they became used to all this affection. And then when people started going back to work and the kids go back to school, the dogs are going nuts because they haven't been trained to ever be alone. And then they got naughty, or they messed, or they, you know. And it is what it was going to happen. And now they're all back at shelters again. And now it's worse than ever because people don't realize that, well, it's just mean, it's abusive. And I just get a little angry about it. But, you know, it is what it was, you know. So I did have, that pandemic did cause a lot of people to stay at home and cancel, which was fine. You know, I'd rather do that. But I did have rules for those that did come. You had to wear a mask, and they always came through a side gate, and I had part of I had put up a temporary wall in my garage. It was an intake where I kept all dog supplies, and dogs would come in there and their food stayed in there, but they stayed in the other part of the house, kitchen, family room area. And I did have a few of them that objected to what I wanted them to do. And I explained to them the gate will stay locked. Normally I'd lock the gate when they're coming, and they just come in there and yell at me, or they let the dogs in. And but this guy came up, and they were clients that were a little testy and rather arrogant. He was. But they were going on a vacation, and they wanted me to take the dog. And I said, fine, they're going to be there at 6:30 in the morning. And I'm up early, so I didn't care. And I said, now remember the rule, because I'd emailed everybody and made sure they got it. When you get out of your car, you wear a mask. Before I unlocked the gate, I had wipes out there in a bucket. I said, you wipe the dog down completely, because the dog's been in your house. I don't know who's been in there with it. If they cough, they sneeze, the dogs, that's on their fur. So they're carrying germs every place they go. If they go out for a walk, their pads are filled with germs. If you've coughed and sneezed in your house and on your couch, the dogs are on it, and it's on there. So you wipe the dog down completely, put that pad in the bucket, take another pad, and before you let it through the gate, you wipe the pads of its feet and you put it through. Then you wipe down the dog food bag or the bag that you have its food in, and you put it inside the gate. Then we're set, and then I verify the date and the time you're picking up. And the guy comes through the door, and I said, you don't have your mask on? And he said, I don't have to wear a mask, I'm fine. And I said, no mask, no service. And he said, we are on our way to the airport and we don't have masks, so you will take this dog. He was, I didn't like the man very well, and he's one that I was not gonna ever take again. But I said, sir, I said, you put on a mask and you come down and you wipe the dog down as I instructed in the email that you received. I don't have to do that. You will open up this gate because we have a plane to catch. And I said, well, my house, my rules. I won't. I will not take a chance because I can't get the shots. And I said, and I will not take a chance. So you'll have to go someplace else. And he said, well, and I said, and you're lying to me, which I don't tolerate liars. I'm not lying to you. And I said, you go in the airport, you have to have a mask there. Duh, you know. So he just started screaming at me, grabbing the gate and yanking it. And I said, sir, you know, you could be in real trouble doing that. I said, just be a good boy, go put on your mask, and do as I ask, and which everybody else is doing. Well, you can't make me. And I said, you're absolutely right. So the gate was still locked. I walked in, I shut the door. And they're at my front door. He's at my front door screaming like a crazy fool. I get a call from a neighbor, are you in trouble? I said, I'll just go out there and watch him. I don't know if he breaks something, record it. I said, he's just having a temper tantrum. He's a big man with a temper tantrum. So they finally left, and then I get a call about 40 minutes from his wife. She is sobbing and crying. He is so angry, and we're gonna miss our plane. Could you come to the airport and pick up the dog? I said, absolutely not. I said, I will not do that. Well, we've called everybody, and you're gonna ruin our vacations. And I said, I don't think I'm the one ruining the vacation. She said, please, she's whispering to me. She's terrified of this man. I thought, I I know where I'm going to help you get to the women shelter in Clackamas County. Love those people. So she was just desperate, and I felt bad for her because she was a dear lady, but she was definitely, he was a jerk. Well, I could say something, but I won't do that. And so he got on the phone and he said, well, you do know I'm going to sue you. And I said, oh, please do. He said, what? And I said, please sue me. I said, I'm a little low on money. And I said, I could use the money I'm going to get from you. And he said, you're going to be so sorry. Wait till my attorneys get done with you. And I said, well, I won't need an attorney. And he said, you signed a contract. Well, nobody keeps copies of their contracts that they sign with me. He said, what are you talking about? I said, it's right on there, all the rules. You signed it. And he hung up on me. And they called me about 2 months later and asked me to watch the dog. I said, sorry, I'm booked.
Yeah. You learned a lesson, I guess.
I doubt it. People like that, I don't think learn. They just bully people. I cannot be bullied. I am a master of, I will never take bullying again.
Well, you've had quite a life, Sue.
I have had a wonderful life. I mean, you know, I was raised really bad, but on the other hand, my parents did some really good thing for people in the world. My dad had a 3rd grade education. He was brilliant. My mother had an 8th grade graduation, and they did so much for people, and they were very successful in their businesses. And one of the things in the book, how did your parents influence you? Well, like I say, they were pretty rough parents. And corporal punishment was their second language. And I just thought, you know, I don't want to put anything negative in that book. I want to make kind of a lesson. I said, my parents taught me to be adventurous because we lived all over the United States. My dad would say, pack what you need. We're leaving in a half hour, leaving at 5:30 in the morning, leaving. We might end up in Texas. We never know where we're going to end up. We lived here and there all over the country, 13 grade schools. We call my dad the gypsy tramp. I don't know what he was, but anyway. But you learn they taught us to be adventurous, not be afraid to get in the car and go, to be resilient, to just be independent, and that's what I took from it. And the way they raised me, as far as I'm concerned, you have a choice. You can be a survivor, you can be a victim. And I'm a survivor, and I chose to be happy, because happiness is a choice, right?
Do you see some things in you that are coming through your children now, how they're growing their kids up?
Yes, I do. My kids didn't have grandparents, and so they said, they all, you know, the 2 that have children, the 2 youngest, have always said, my kids are so lucky to have grandparents. And they brought it up because they didn't have them. And because my parents were not into girls. 5 girls, that was just crazy. And I thought it was great. And, but every now and then they will say, we just didn't like the way that worked, and so we'll not do that. You know, and so now that 2 of them are grandparents now, finally, with Jamie's been for a while, she can't do enough for her grandkids. You know, because she saw the way I was with her kids. And I mean, I went completely opposite of my parents. I never missed a game. I didn't miss, you know, Nicole bouncing around and kept falling on her bottom trying to dance in a dance class for 4-year-olds. It was the best thing I ever saw. She should have got an award for it. And, you know, you just, again, it's a choice and you learn by it. You learn by, I don't want to be, and as a kid, I used to watch them thinking, I don't ever want to be like that.
So how many grandchildren do you have now?
I have 4 grandchildren. from 31 to 26 in May, all of them. And the oldest one is a doctor. He's finally a doctor in Pittsburgh. And of course, Nicole's over at the ranch, and she works for Edward Jones over there. And then her husband does great things with seeds and plants and dirt and whatever all they do on ranches. And then they have the little girl who will be 5 in November, and Heston, who will be 2 in September. And then my youngest daughter has Octavia, who will be 6 months, will be 6 months in a few days. And then Madison was just born a month ago from my daughter's other daughter.
Great.
So, aren't I lucky? 4 grandchildren, 4 great-grandchildren.
You are indeed.
I mean, it's just awesome. It's the best.
And do you see them with horses and dogs and all those things?
Oh yeah, well Jamie, they've got all the horses over there. And actually all my girls were very much into horses. My oldest daughter sold her horse farm, or sold her property where she had horses in Oregon City a couple years ago and moved to South Carolina. Don't ask me why, but she gets to do what she wants to do because she's that age. And my second daughter was in horses forever, and like I told you, she passed away 10 years ago. And then Lenora, my third daughter, she's in Italy right now, working with horses. She's never been married and never wanted to be, and animals are her thing. Maybe I went overboard, do you think? I don't know. But she travels everywhere, all over. She's lived all over the world.
Well, I know one of your projects was an exchange program with Japan.
Yes,
right?
exchange program. That started out in 1975 when I worked on the state board for a bit, and they came up with the Japanese 4-H is the LABO exchange program, a LABO program, and ours is 4-H. And Japan had contacted Clackamas County about working on an exchange program with children. So I got very involved in that and had Hiroko stay with us for a summer. And they sent the kids over when they were 9, 10, and 11, if you can believe it. And at that time, these kids knew no English, and very, very protected children, and to send poor little Hiroko to my madhouse. Oh my God, that wonderful girl. Years later, I met her and her husband in Tokyo for lunch, and her English was, and she says, oh, crazy, so crazy. But she was delightful. And then a few years later, then friends of mine, part of my WOW group, Women of Wilsonville, they were, Kathy's husband was the mayor of Wilsonville at that time, and they went to a church thing in downtown Portland, and they met this delightful man, Kenji Karahashi, and he wanted to have a sister city. And so Kathy came back and called the core group, which was 8 of us, and she said, he wants it. I said, let's do it. She said, well, you're the only one that's had anything going with the Japanese thing through 4-H. And so I dug out all my stuff, and I said, okay, let's sit down and make a plan. So we put together a sister city really quick, got 4 members of the city council involved, different business people involved, and we contacted Kenji and his group and started a great sister city program, which is still going strong.
Still going strong. That's
yes.
Great.
Yeah, we're 42 years now.
Well, Sue, it's been a great afternoon with you today.
Thank you.
Hearing about these things you've done and how to keep track of them, I don't know how you do it. But you're obviously full of energy and compassion and commitment to whatever causes you believe in. And
thank you.
Here we are in Tualatin with 26 years now here?
No, 17.
17, but you're on the chamber.
Yes.
Still here in Tualatin.
Chamber, I finally let it go because I retired, but I have been called to help out with things, and
Right.
you know me.
Fundraising is in your blood.
It is, and helping out. I mean, I just love being involved, and I really feel, Larry, that the older you get, you've got to keep busy.
Well, you're sure an example.
Well,
of
I don't
that.
have time to stop. Just don't have time.
But you're doing new things, artwork and some stuff. Like
Yeah,
that.
watercolor, and I'm doing a lot of quilting. In fact, I have a young woman coming over Saturday to spend the day. I'm taking a day away from the book, thank you, Lord. And I'm going to teach her how to make a baby quilt. Her niece is going to, and she's always wanted to. Her mother was my dearest friend for years, and she passed away a few years ago, her fifth bout of cancer. So, she's like one of mine. Yeah.
Well, you're certainly an example of the battery commercial, right? the money that never stops.
There you go.
Energizer.
Clunk, 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 clunk.
Thanks again for your time.
Well, thanks for asking me. It's been fun going down memory lane.
Good.
And, you know, whatever needs to be done, give me a holler. If I can do it, I will.
Okay. Thank
Okay.
you. Thank you.
Thanks, Mike. Do I hit the red button?